All right, let's go.
This story.
This will be our video for the night. All right, this will be our video for the night. Mr. Ballin, a classic. Mr. Ballin, if you're watching, collab with me. I will put on the hat backwards. We got the same hair length. You won't even know it's not you, and I'll do a video. Like, you literally won't even know it's not you. Like, everyone will think, oh, it's just Mr. Ballin, but he looks slightly different. You know? That'll be the collab. It's just, I'll just do a video on your channel.
It has a wild ending. It is worth sticking around.
And I'll just act like
But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to this channel and turn on all notifications.
Thank you, Nick Whitesides, for the Prime. Oh, we have a hype train? 500 biddies, too, from Lilico. We're drinking water while these peasants starve. Thank you so much.
Pretty dark. But most Americans tend to associate the term goth with the teenagers of the late 90s and early 2000s that wore all black and wore heavy black boots and would hang out in cemeteries. And while that representation of goth culture is, of course, limited, it is a good representation of the two protagonists in today's story, best friends Rachel and Molly. In the 1990s, Rachel and Molly were full-blown...
Yeah, we would trade. We would basically trade channels. He'd make a video on my channel looking like me, and I'd do it on his channel looking like him.
Goths. They had black hair, black makeup, black clothes. They had the black heavy combat boots. And at one point, they and their other goth friends started hanging out in a cemetery to be kind of ironic and funny. Like, look at us, we're goth, we hang out in cemeteries.
Hell yeah, cemeteries.
And then they actually enjoyed it and began hanging out in a cemetery like every weekend. One Friday night.
Dude, there's a cemetery. It's so creepy. We have this, like, these trails in my hometown, not where I live now, but my hometown. And it's literally like a bit, you know, just like a really nice trail. Like, it's really clean, really put together. Like, it's just a bunch of different trails, like almost like a little park walking area. And then you, like, go off the trail a little bit, and there's a cemetery. But it's like the most botched cemetery ever. Like, it's only like 4 different, it's from like the 1800s or some shit. There's like 4 different gravestones, and they're like leaning to the side and leaning and stuff like that. Stop interrupting yourself. No, I do what I want. But one, because I had to go out in the trails all the time when I was younger for cross country and running and stuff. And I went out there one time, and it was the creepiest shit. Like, there's so many, like, stories about that place, to be fair. There's, like, a billion, like, haunted stories about that place. But it was, like, getting dark, and it was foggy. But the only foggy location, like, it wasn't foggy anywhere else. The only foggy location was just that little cemetery with, like, 4 gravestones, like, leaning to the side. And the reason people say it's, like, haunted and shit is because, like, people litter there all the time. People, like, leave their used condoms there all the time. You know, it's like a really gross place that people just disrespect and stuff. So everyone's, like, saying that it's, like, haunted because of that. But yeah, it's creepy. It's a fucking creepy place. Nothing like fucking on some gravestones, I know, right?
Molly calls Rachel to go hang out in the cemetery. And as it happened, Rachel was just sitting at home and she was bored out of her mind. And so the call came at a perfect time. And so Rachel's like, yeah, I'd love to go. So she flies downstairs and she sits on her front step and she's waiting for Molly to show up. And eventually Molly's car rolls down the street and Rachel immediately recognizes that Molly is the only one in the car. And Rachel, whenever she would go to the cemetery at night with Molly, they were always there with a group of at least 4 people. Even though they liked hanging out in the cemetery, they did recognize that it was a little bit creepy at night to be out there. And so they liked kind of rolling in a fairly big group. And so Rachel hops in the car.
I'm not going to mimic his voice.
The first question to Molly is, where is everybody? Are they meeting us there? And Molly said, oh no, everybody else is either working or they're kind of hungover from the party from last night. So it's just us 2. I hope that's okay. And at the time, Rachel actually in her head was like, no, I don't really want to do this anymore. But she was like, oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll just go. Just the two of us. It'll be fine. Molly takes off from Rachel's house and she makes the familiar kind of winding commute to the front gate of this enormous cemetery that sits right in the center of town. They drive underneath this massive wrought iron gate that looks very medieval, very foreboding. It looks like it's out of a cheesy horror movie, this like cliche entrance to a cemetery.
Rachel was the ghost the whole time.
And they're on this road that stretches all the way down through the cemetery and basically splits it in two. On the left side, as you're driving in, was an area closest to town, and also it butted up against a major public university. And then on this side of the cemetery, you had a bunch of residential houses that butted up against the side of the cemetery, and where Molly and Rachel and their...
I would hate, because there's in our area, there's like houses that are literally next to a whatever it's called, a cemetery. I would hate living next to a cemetery. Starting to sound like those girls with the Slenderman incident. I don't think it is, but it does sound similar to it, yeah.
Crew like to go was on the right side all the way back in the corner, because there was a section that was kind of situated between these two hills where not only were they obscured from the cemetery road and the main road once they were down in this little depression, there was also no houses that happened to look over that spot. So it was kind of like the hidden section of the cemetery, and there was also this big boulder that people sat on and a big tree you could lean up against. So that was their spot. So Molly drives in the gates, she heads down that road and she turns right onto a dead end road. She takes that down about a couple hundred meters till it dead ends, and they park, and then the girls get out of the car, they light up cigarettes, and they walk down this hill that's just beyond where this dead end comes to an end. And so they walk down this hill, and it brings them to this clearing.
Is this just going to be a ghost story? I'm curious.
Rachel hops up on the rock, and she turns around, so she's like, facing back up the hill they just walked down, and Molly is right next to her on her right, leaning up against the tree. And for the next hour or so, they just crushed cigarettes and talked about their various boyfriend drama and life drama and whatever else they wanted to talk about. After a while...
High school, am I right, guys? Fucking high school. Smoking cigs. Talking about boys. And how Stephanie cheated on Steven with Barry. And Barry's got a bigger cock than Steven. Ah, dude, those were the days. Fucking Barry.
For a while, the girls started to smell a bonfire, and from where they were sitting, they could see a hill in front of them, and there was actually another hill over here, and so their view is pretty obscured out of this little valley they're in, so they can't see any fires anywhere. And so they assumed that what they're smelling was a fire coming from the other side of the cemetery, because there's that huge university over there, and they knew sometimes the college kids would come onto the cemetery and they would light fires over there, and inevitably the police would get called and they would break up the fire because you're not allowed to fire on the cemetery. And whenever they did that, the police would actually make rounds around the entire cemetery. And historically, basically, if you were there hanging out,
smoking, drinking, and racist
and so they think, okay, this is probably a good time to leave, because probably in the next 30 minutes to an hour, the police are going to be here. They're going to come over here, see our car, and they're going to ask us what we're doing, and we're going to have to leave. So let's just leave now. So Rachel hops off the rock, and the two of them begin meandering their way back up the hill towards the car. When they get about halfway up the hill, they notice to their right something bright. Now, because they were higher up, they could actually see over the hill to their right.
Is it actually a forest fire?
What they were seeing was the top of a bonfire. So the girls take a couple more steps up the hill to gain some elevation to hopefully be able to see better down into where this fire is. But even when they're up almost at the top of the hill, that fire is too far down on the other side of that hill that they can't see any people, and they can't really tell how big the fire is. They're just basically seeing the top flickers of it. Even though they don't know anything about the people over there at this fire, what they do know is when they showed up,
is it going to be like a weird ass ritual shit?
They would have recognized it. So whoever's over there had to have shown up and built this fire while Rachel and Molly were down at the rock and tree. Which means there's a pretty good chance
it might turn into a forest fire.
Rachel and Molly. This is a pretty private area. Their car was parked a little bit off to the side of the trail, and so Molly picks up on this, and she says to Rachel, "Hey, let's sneak back down."
There's so many weird ass cult people. I wouldn't be surprised.
And see who's here. I bet it's a bunch of college kids. It'll be funny to see what they're doing. But Rachel had a weird feeling about it. She's thinking to herself, if this is college kids, why would they have their bonfire this far away from campus? I mean, this is literally the farthest point away from the side of the cemetery that's close to their campus. If they're having a party over
Yeah,
here,
maybe she's
there's a good
baiting
chance
her
that anybody
over there.
going to it is going to need to drive. And that just doesn't make sense if you can just walk to the other side of the campus and have a bonfire over there. And so Rachel is logically...
Dude, why? It's always like small towns that have like those cults, like those weird sacrilegious, like sacrificing people with in a bonfire with like the goat masks in the middle of the woods, like type shit.
deducing that this is probably not college kids. But who else is having a bonfire in the secret section of the cemetery in the middle of the night? And Rachel's thinking that now, if the police come here, they're definitely going to see us because we're so close to
from
this
the pig
bonfire.
cult. We wear pig
and
masks.
so it's probably not a good idea to stick around much longer. But despite Rachel's hesitations, she is intrigued and she does want to see what's going on over there. So the two girls walk down the hill. They make it down to the rock and the tree. Then they turn left and they begin walking up this other hill, the hill that's going to bring them up to this fire. And so they only get a few steps up this hill when they are suddenly hit with this disgusting, putrid smell that just encompasses them and it makes them gag, and they're covering their mouth and their nose, and Rachel exclaims, "Oh my God, what is that?" And then as soon as she says it, she realizes she was really loud, and she's like, and Molly's like, and they both freeze, wondering if the people on the other side of the hill have heard them. And after a little bit of silence,
what the fuck?
Molly's like, "You want to keep going?" And Rachel's like, "No, we gotta go." Between the horrible smell that's obviously coming from...
Dude, why didn't anyone claim the fart sound right there? That'd have been perfect. Oh my God, you farted, you stupid... Just yells it super loud. Who the fuck farted?
From this weird fire.
Yeah,
and
Rachel's
the fact
a smart
that Rachel
one.
basically just gave them away. And so for all we know, these people on the other side of this hill have heard us, and now they're waiting for us to come over the edge.
There it is.
And
There
it's
it
gonna
is.
be really awkward if we suddenly crash their bonfire. Rachel, she's thinking about these things, and so she's like, "Let's go. We gotta go." Molly's disappointed, but she gets it, and the two girls turn around and begin walking back. And so they walk past the tree
I wanna
and the
see
rock
it,
on
though.
the
I
left.
wanna know.
They turn right, and they're about to walk up the hill that's gonna bring them to their car, when Rachel just turns around to look at the hill towards the fire where they were headed before.
There's a bunch of people
and
chasing
standing
her.
at the top of that hill is a man just looking down at them. And the fire is illuminating him from behind, and they can clearly tell it's a man standing there looking at them. And
Monka.
immediately the girls felt really uncomfortable. It was almost like they had just been caught spying, even though they didn't actually get caught spying. It was what they were going to go do. And so they felt like they had almost been caught red-handed. And so Molly and Rachel just turn and begin walking up the hill, kind of with their heads down. They just felt kind of awkward. And so they move a few more steps up this hill, and Rachel looks again at where this guy was standing, and he's now
Is your
gone.
family
Rachel's relieved, but then
Think
she...
about it.
Thank you, Broken Delta.
64 gifted a tier 1 sub to Local Street Urchin.
Thank you so much.
realizes
I appreciate it.
he's gone because he's walking, power walking, down the hill towards them. And Rachel gasps and she grabs Molly and pushes her and says, "Go, go, 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 go." And they start running up the hill, and Rachel looks around, and now this guy is running towards them. He's down now at the rock and the tree. He's gaining on them. They sprint up over the top.
Pumpkin Dad.
They run to Molly's car, and Molly's fumbling with her keys to get the car open, and Rachel's yelling, "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up." Finally, she gets it open, and they both jump inside. Rachel locks the car doors, and as Molly is turning the key over, Rachel's looking out the back, and she's waiting to see this guy. And sure enough, as they pull off, she sees his head come up over the ridgeline, just enough that he can clearly see them leaving, and then he ducks back down and he disappears. And the two of them speed down the road. They make a left onto that main
Jesus.
drive, and
Good thing
speed
they
out
saved.
of the cemetery. For the first few minutes of their drive, neither of them say anything. This was just a very traumatic experience, and it was also very confusing because they thought they were going over to spy on college kids having a bonfire.
They
and then they're
burning
hit with that
bodies,
horrible
bro.
Smell, like what was that horrible smell? And then they leave, and there's this guy who did not look like he was a college kid. He looked like he was probably in his 40s. And
Maybe
then
he
he's
killed someone
chasing
and he's
them.
burning some bodies.
Like, what was that?
Trying to
And when
burn
they
the
did start
evidence.
talking about it, they couldn't really come to any sort of rational conclusion of what had just happened. And so they were both very spooked, and they decide, let's just go home and talk about this tomorrow. And so Molly drops Rachel off at her house, and Molly goes
There's
home,
more.
and both girls go to bed. The next
4
morning,
minutes
Rachel
left.
gets up and she heads down to the kitchen where her mom is already there having her morning coffee. And Rachel sits down, and she's not a big talker. She's not about to start by saying, hey, guess what happened to me last night at the cemetery? Instead, she just sits there, and for a little bit, her mom just kind of rambles about work and what she's doing that day. And then all of a sudden, her mom,
One of them's
it's
gonna
like she
go
has this
missing.
epiphany.
Oh no.
And she goes, Rachel, did you hear what happened last night? And Rachel's like, no, what? And her mom's like, someone I work with. I don't know her personally, but she works in the same building as me. She got kidnapped from the parking garage where I parked my car. I have seen her park her car in this lot, and she got kidnapped. And Rachel's like, oh my God, really? Like, what happened to her? Did they find her? And her mom was like, yeah, but it was too late. The person who had kidnapped her had killed her and then tried to dispose of her body at the cemetery by burning her in a bonfire. Rachel suddenly felt sick because now she knew what was happening last night, and she knows what that smell was. Rachel immediately pours her heart out about everything that happened the night before, and her mom is totally horrified, but she's in particular horrified that they clearly had been there when the killer had arrived and set up shop and began burning this body. They were just literally 50 meters away the whole time. And so her mom...
Dude, think about this, chat. What if Rachel, the smart one, wasn't so smart and she's like, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Like, imagine. They'd be fucking dead. They'd be burned alive. Oh, man. That is creepy.
Mom tells her, you and Molly have to go to the police station and make a statement. They have not caught this person yet. You've seen this person. You got to tell them. And so Rachel calls Molly and breaks the news about what was actually happening the night before.
Wow.
And who was
I was
actually
not
chasing
expecting
them
that.
to their car, and says, we have to go to the police station. And so they agree. They go down to the police station and they tell them what happened, but they didn't get a great look at him. They could only say that he was maybe in his 40s and maybe average height. And so the police wrote it all down, but they basically said, look, if you can think of more details, we would love to hear those, because this isn't really enough to go on. And so the girls go back home and they're thinking to themselves, did he see us? Does he know that we saw him? Do you think he knows that we know he's a killer now? And so they're freaking out. But luckily, within 48 hours, the police actually caught this guy because he was driving around in the murder victim's car and someone spotted him. They pulled him over and he confessed, and so he went to jail. Needless to say, Rachel and Molly thanked their lucky stars that when they started ascending that hill and they were hit with that smell, that Rachel said, let's not go any farther.
Rachel,
Let's
big
leave.
brain, dude.
Because had they continued
Rachel, big
and
brain.
gone to the other side,
Oh my God.
they could have wound up in the bonfire too. So that's going to do it, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's story.
Dude, oh my God. Oh, dude, that's why, dude, again, like I say so many times, every time I watch any scary video, it's always the woods, dude. It's always out in the woods. This weird shit always happens. This creepy ass weird shit. Just don't go in the woods at night, ever. Just ever. Burning is the worst way to dispose of body. Okay, the doctors. If you're a doctor, tell us what is the best way. I need to know. Everyone in chat needs to know what's the best way. I hate shit that seems like it's gonna have a supernatural turn, but it's just horrifyingly real shit going. I see, chat, that the thing is, I do not like supernatural and like paranormal. I don't get as afraid of that stuff compared to real life shit like this. If it turned out like they saw a ghost in the middle of the night and then they never saw it again, that's kind of boring. Like this is real. This is real scary shit. Lesson learned, don't go outside. Yes, be like SpongeBob. Stay inside with the chip, the napkin, and the penny. The best way to dispose of bodies is not kill them in the first place. Well, you can't. I mean, come on. You can't just tell me to not do it. Come on, man. Come on.
Now it's time to walk away. I hope you enjoyed your stay. Did you laugh or cry or maybe subscribed? I'll thank you either way. You know I will miss miss you. I hope you return. Tell your friend or your mother to get me more views, please.